Buenos dias. So, when the folks at the chamber called me a few weeks ago and asked me to speak here today about resilience, my mind immediately started thinking of ways to respectfully decline. Um, it's incredible how quick my mind goes to finding excuses, right, when I'm put out of my comfort zone. Things like I'm not prepared, I'm not a subject matter expert, I'm not good at public speaking, and I mean that. Things like I was thinking I'm just going to be too nervous, I'm going to mess something up, ridicule myself, and this room full of, big wigs and and whatnot. And then you throw the new CEOs on there too, so thank you for that. Uh, then my true spirit kicked in, and I had an inner voice telling me, you know what, you got this. You're gonna figure it out. You're the king of fake it till you make it. And but the deciding factor for me was that Andy said, "Hey, we can get a podium up there if you want." I said, "Say less." So here I am. So to prepare, I started doing an extensive Google search for like 3 minutes about, resilience and what it meant. And I found that there's physical, mental, emotional, and social. And then there you have it. My time up yet? No. But needless to say, I figured out really quick that my best bet was not to fake it, was on the contrary to be genuine and authentic. And so I decided that I'm going to share my story with you all today, parts of my story and how I grew up. And I'm sure that some of you will relate in some shape, way, or form. Presently, I'm married. I have 3 kids with my wife, Noemi. And as Bob was saying, I co-own R&R Mechanical with my twin brother, Rolando. But if I go back in time, my parents met in Chicago in the late 70s, and they soon thereafter got hitched and had my older brother, Oscar. About 14 months later or so, Rolando and I were born. And then soon thereafter, we moved back down to Mexico, which is where they're from. And I went to live in a very remote, small village embedded in the Sierra Madre Mountains of the state of Durango. I'm trying to figure out this clicker thing here, sorry. I want to show you a picture of that, but maybe not. Oh, well, okay. So that's it. That's where I spent my childhood. Those are my first memories growing up. The 7 families that lived there grew corns, beans, potatoes. I'm not singing. Hay. We had no running water, no electricity. We were, about 2 hours to the closest town up the mountains on a 2-track road. My brothers and I grew up doing, the typical farm chores like feeding the animals, milking the cows, help my dad and uncles and grandpa fixing fences, etc. We lived in a tiny cabin with a very small kitchenette. Cabins are popular on Airbnb today, right? But this is it. That it's a little bit more deteriorated than from what it was back then. But this is our house, and we lived there with my parents and my 2 brothers, as well as my baby sister for a little bit there. There's only 3 trucks in the village, and people just would not go to town very much. Maybe maybe twice a month, an adult from one of the houses that had a truck would go to town. Everybody would give them their shopping list and for things to bring back to the village for the people. And I remember that specifically because I remember my aunts. They were teenagers, and they would sit there anxiously waiting for whomever to come back from town to see if they brought back any letters, because that's how they communicated with their boyfriends and whatnot. So I'll tell my kids that most of the toys that we had were handmade, either by us or by our uncles. They were carved from wood, like slingshots, arches, toy rifles, spinners. We'd spent countless hours by the creek building figurines out of clay, mostly animals, and then we'd take them back to the house and bake them by the wood stove and get them to harden up, and then we'd go play with them and break them and go back do it again. We had no TV, we had radio. My kids can't comprehend that. But I don't ever remember being bored, ever. We were so creative. We always found ways to have fun. Nothing more exciting than going down a steep hill in a wooden cart with no brakes on it. Just that was fun. I wouldn't do it again, but not everything was fun and games. We were taught a strong work ethic from as far back as I can remember. My dad had some really tough ways of building character. I remember being sent with my brothers, into the mountains miles on mules to search for and herd back stray cows that, just some got lost. And we were probably 8 or 9 years old at the time. And, we'd pack a lunch and we'd go. And my dad said, do not come back with those cows. And be sure to not bring back, some cow that is not ours or your grandpa's. And so we had to recognize a brand, because if we knew that if we got the wrong cow, we were going back and leaving it right where it was. About the same age, my brother Rolando and I would go around the village and we'd collect empty bottles or aluminum cans, and we'd fill over time sacks of them, and we'd send them to town when somebody was going to town, and we'd ask them to bring back with the proceeds, fruit and candy. We'd split the candy 2 to 1. He'd always get the winning hand because he came up with the original idea, So I didn't know it at the time, but that was our first crack at entrepreneurship. My time living in the village was teaching me to work hard and smart, to be creative and be resourceful. When I turned about 10 to 11 years old or so, my parents decided to move back to the U.S., primarily because my mother wanted us to get an education, and staying in the village, well, that meant, we went to 6th grade, and that was it. I don't know how to go back here to the previous slide, but I wanted to show you that blue little cabin looking like thing there in the center. That's a school today. So that's where everybody got schooled. My mom is the sweetest person you'll ever meet, but she would be the fiercest lioness to defend her kids. And let's say that because of some of the teaching methods from the teachers back then, as far as, not the methods, but the disciplinary actions they took, my mom was not their best friend. So we moved back to the west suburbs of Chicago in the early 90s. And we lived in a housing project development predominantly populated by low-income Mexican families. So even though we now had a TV and we had a Nintendo console that my mom purchased and lay away from Kmart, that is really when life got tough for us. And I'll speak for myself here as well. Just this that change coming from a completely different lifestyle and culture, and then we now are immersed in this concrete jungle, and the world just was moving so fast, and there was just no peace. Even though most of the kids around us looked like me, they lived in the same neighborhood, I was somehow still an outsider, and I couldn't fit in. I couldn't figure out why. I guess we just were too rough looking for them. I don't know. We didn't speak English, so that was one of the things, but they spoke Spanish too. But anyway, I remember we got chased coming off the bus stop, and just about every day for a few weeks, we'd get chased by the other kids, group of kids, and they'd chase us, run home from the bus stop, and they would, Oscar, who's our older brother, he would tell Rolando and I to run in a single file we'd run in a single file, and he would run behind us, shielding us because they would throw rocks at us all the way. Okay, come on. So anyway, the the good part is that no kid could outrun us. We just came from the hills and running those valleys. There's no way they're gonna catch up to us. But my brother Oscar finally decided that enough was enough. So one day, as usual, he told us, as soon as you guys get off the bus, run. So we're running. Before we knew it, Oscar wasn't there, so we turned around and he stood back, didn't tell us anything. He waited for one of the main kids, and as soon as he stepped off the bus, he socked him right in the mouth, chipped his tooth, and that was that. So that summer came, and the school year ended, and both my parents would leave us in the little apartment caring for our baby sister. They would go to work. But there's no way we would just stay there, this tiny one-bedroom apartment. That was not going to contain us. So this is when that entrepreneur spirit kicked in again for Rolando and I, and we would see the elote man selling corn on the husk and whatnot. He was going around the neighborhood, and so Rolando thought, hey, we can make some dollars too. So he came up with this great idea that we would go to the nearby grocery store. We would borrow a shopping cart, bring it back, and we would start selling elotes and making some money. We just needed to come up with some capital dollars to do that. So that was my turn to shine at that point. I convinced a neighbor from the upstairs apartment to invest $20 into our business venture, and so we went and purchased the corn and the ingredients, and we got ready. My parents went to work the next morning. We sprung into action. We put those elotes in and boiled them. We set up the cart with all the ingredients, butter, mayo, queso, chile, and here we go, selling elotes. I don't remember, but we probably must have sold one or two. We ate all the rest of them. That guy's probably still chasing after me somewhere to get his money back. We're gonna double his money. We're selling for $1. I don't know what our profit was going to be, but another one of our gigs that I can remember at those times were, we'd go around, fix broken bikes. We'd find, spare parts from other bikes, and we'd basically make one bike out of 4 different ones, and then we'd sell them at the flea market on Sunday, and that was going fine and dandy until one day this cholo, this big gangster from the neighborhood, my brother went to go sell a bike to him, and he recognized it as his, and he started chasing after us to beat us up. And I don't know, I guess he had left it stashed in the woods somewhere. We thought it was abandoned. But anyway, our experiences moving to a new world created an unbreakable bond between my brothers and I. We learned to look out for and depend on each other, and we learned that we were stronger together. I was also learning to adapt and to just literally roll with the punches. About a year after we moved back to the U.S., we then moved to Grand Rapids, and now I've been here most of my life now. Here, I fulfilled one of my mother's dreams, which was, to go to school beyond 6th grade. And I was the first one in my family to graduate from college. It was only a 2-year degree, but that was probably a lot better than what would have been if we just stayed in Mexico. Fast forward to 2005, Rolando started moonlighting in the HVAC trade, and he was working out of his shed, and this is the very shed he was working out of, and in 2008 he officially founded R&R Mechanical Services. He set up a small shop in Burton Heights. And then one day he calls me up and says, hey, I got Oscar on board. Come work with me. What do you say you come over too? Eventually, I partnered up with him, and we built the business together. Today, we employ more than 40 individuals. We continue to grow in capacity, capabilities, revenue. We embrace our values because that is who we are at the core. And that we like to carry that in how we do business, honesty and integrity, loyalty, commitment, family oriented. Our goals, those are goals that we live. That is who we are. And growing the business has definitely not been easy, as you can imagine. We endured many, many rough times, and we've been in situations that we just had no idea how to overcome. We were, knee deep, or no, to what's the phrase? Hasta el cuello, up, neck deep. There you go. Times of uncertainty and that feeling of defeat, one of those difficulties that we identified early on was the fact that we could not attract experienced candidates on a consistent basis. That's a theme nowadays with talent, but we've always had that. So we pivoted. We started hiring based on personality, and then developed their skills in-house. That has been much slower, much more costly, but we've resulted with a great group of core team that are trained to our standard and very very little turnaround. So from time to time, when things get tough, I do a deep internal dive, and I think of my mom's unbreakable will to give us a better chance at life. My dad pushing us to break our fears. My brother Oscar protecting us from the bullies. My brother Rolando's entrepreneurial spirit and how he was never at a lack of ideas. I remember the things that I've endured and learned along the way, and the fact that I've overcome so many obstacles already. That's usually the shakeup I need. To boost my confidence and regulate my emotions during tough times. It was intimidating when I got the agenda and it said leadership lesson, and it said my name. I'm like, oh, how am I gonna? To me that talks about giving a lecture of some sort. I was like, man, I can't. That's not me. But so I can't. Of course, give much of a lesson on anything. But I can tell you that I've embodied resilience. Based on how I've coped with and adapted to the challenges professionally and personally. I continuously build resiliency by making connections with people. I value and I prioritize relationships with understanding and just down-to-earth people who share their story with me. I've learned that a lot from hearing the stories of other people as well. And just continue to work on it. It's a work in progress. Google does say that resilience is a skill you developed over time. Thank you.